Elijah Mays once said, "I believe everyone is born into the world to do something unique and distinctive." I have been fortunate enough to have opportunities that have allowed me to discover my unique and distinctive purpose. Unfortunately, every young person does not have that same experience. Building community, discussing the hard topics, challenging ideas, promoting HBCUs, and advocating for equal educational opportunities for all Americans. Dean Talk brings together various people to discuss topics which are critical to the improvement of education and equality in America. I am your host, Arwayne Woodson, and welcome to this episode of Dean Talk. Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is a big week for me and for the show, and I'm really excited. This is our first education week. We have several shows happening this week. Tonight, I'm fortunate to have Dr. Tymon Graham from Kentucky State University. Friday, we have Patrick McCoy. And then Saturday, I am hosting a Grant Writing 101 workshop. You do have to register for that, and you can find the information for that on my website. And I'm so glad to have everyone here with us today. There are a couple of things I want to do. So this week, this is new for us. We have started sponsors. So I want to thank our sponsors for this week. Surface, which is a new up-and-coming facial product and skincare company. They launched 2 weeks ago, so we're thankful to them for supporting the show. And then Java 365, which is a coffee company. I'm so impressed with the amount of variety they have. That's their website, and they are partnering with us for the rest of the year. And there is a promo code. So you put in Woodson20, and you will get 20% off all of the brands and all of the items on their website. I am getting my coffee from there, and most of you know I am a coffee drinker to my core, and so I'm very excited for that partnership. Then do not forget to partner with me and visit my Facebook. Make sure you sign up for my Instagram and also for my new YouTube channel. We are trying to make sure that we connect with everyone in every way possible. And finally, we are raising money for the Woodson Fund for our scholarships that we are giving out to HBCU students across the country. Most of you know that COVID has really impacted not just our students, but their families. And as they prepare to go home and not return until 2021, we want to make sure that we have funds to assist them. So visit WoodsonASSOC.com, or you can even Cash App to Woodson & Associates, and all of that money goes directly to our students. We do not keep any of the money that goes to the scholarship fund for any of our business purposes. So I am excited about tonight's show. I met Dr. Graham when we hosted our HBCU conference last month. Phenomenal. You know, everyone has had nothing but amazing things to say. And so we're just glad to have him on the show. And I will bring Dr. Graham on now. Hey, sir, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I am doing pretty good. Thank you for being on the show today. We also already have greetings. So thank you for being on the show today. I'm very excited to have you. As we get started, tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Oh, Tymon Graham, Southern raised from South Carolina, the superb city of Sumter, is what I like to call it. You know, you got to give your city a little something. So from South Carolina, did my undergrad at South Carolina State. So HBCU from the core. Did my master's at University of West Georgia in Carrollton, Georgia, and then my doctorate at Benedictine University right outside of Chicago. So been in higher ed since 2000. Well, I like to say a long way before then, because in undergrad, you get to see, you know, what that higher ed life is like. You get to see the HBCU experience. You get to see the activities. You get to see all those things that make colleges and universities what they are, and those experiences. But first started out at South Georgia doing something that I absolutely said I would not do, which was housing. That was the one area that I said, this is not for me. And that was the one area I went into. So first job out was in housing and worked at South Georgia College down in Douglas, Georgia. And then went to Coker College in South Carolina for a few years, still doing housing and orientation. That's kind of where I got to expand what my view looked like for higher ed and for student affairs. And then came to Kentucky State. So been at Kentucky State since 2018 and currently serve as chief of staff to the best president, not just HBCU president, but the best president, Dr. M. Christopher Brown II. So,
well, it's funny because, originally that was where I was supposed to go to school. I had paid my deposit and everything, but then I heard the Morehouse College Glee Club, and, that was the end of that. I mean, I was going to be a music major, and there was nothing that compared.
I do have some friends that went to Morehouse and one that worked with the Glee Club, so it's not a bad choice. Not a bad choice.
And a lot of my brothers and sisters who I went to high school with and all, a lot of them went to Kentucky State. And Dr. Smith was the choir director, and
the legend.
Yes, and so they all came up through there, and they're all doing amazing. So I'm just always appreciative of all of our HBCUs. And I too said I would never work in housing. That is just a whole different.
That's a beast in its own. So,
and I am fortunate that although when I was at Payne, I oversaw housing. I did not have to work in housing. That I just have great respect for any people who work in housing.
Oh yeah, you missed out. Then you missed out on some really good, some good times. Then if you weren't in housing.
No, I'll continue to pass on that. So. For some people who don't know, what is a chief of staff? A lot of HBCUs have them. Some PWIs have them. But, it was funny when I was talking about the show to people, they were like, what is a chief of staff? And I realized that unless you're in like politics or education, a lot of people have no point of reference. So what is a chief of staff?
I like to say a chief of staff is all things, everything. So you catch a lot of things and help to manage a lot of things, kind of to see moving pieces. One thing that I learned very early in my role is that you touch a lot of things and you see a lot of things and you give a lot of insight on a president's behalf, but you don't always see the end result until probably the end. You see, you give some instruction, you give some dialogue, you give some thoughts, but you don't always see it until the very end. So the chief of staff could mean a lot of different things for a lot of different leaders. So you're the complement, you're the voice, you're, like someone said, all things, everything. That's who you are. One person though that I have read about and watched, he served not necessarily as a chief of staff, was Barack Obama's, right? It was his body man, it was his iPod, it was his I have an upset day, you're going to be that person that I'm going to say, and it's going to feel like it's you, but it's not you. So you're all things, everything to your leader. So biggest supporter.
I was one of our presidents. I was Dr. Sullivan's chief of staff, and I say when people ask me what I did, I was like, more like, what don't I do?
What's your normal day like? The normal day is I get up and I work. So
right.
whatever that is looks like for that day.
And they did not live in the presidential house because they were from Augusta. They had their own home somewhere else in metropolitan Augusta. And so I even had to oversee the house because all we did was rent it out or use it for official functions. So it was just so many things. I was like, I will say this, there's never a dull moment because you don't really know what you're going to be doing.
Right. You never know. Any day, you never know. Never a dull moment, though. Never a dull moment.
So did you always want to be in education, or when did that really happen? Like when you decided, I'm going to do this thing?
I think I always wanted to be in a space where I helped others, right? My mom worked in home health, so I was like, oh, I could, work, because what I saw was healthcare. Realized that was not for me, but I think at the core, enjoyed educating. So even at South Carolina State, I started out as an elementary education major, realized that I did not want to specifically work with students that could talk. So I realized that was not the course for me at that moment. So I went into child development, and that was students that could then cry. So it gave me a different perspective, and I realized I did not want to work with people that could cry. And then I did want to work with people that could talk at that age. So I went into SGA and campus activities and realized that, student affairs, that was a thing. Because, that's not a major that you major in undergrad. But when I realized it was a thing, I knew that higher ed was the place that I wanted to be.
Yeah, I say all the time, I swear I would never be in education at all. My mother was a 37-year teacher, and I swore that was the one thing I would never do. And then when I finally got kind of thrown into it, I actually love it. Now, there's some days that I'm just like, this is a whole lot. But it's so funny, the one thing I tried to avoid all those years is actually the thing that I was supposed to be doing.
It's very rewarding, though. So I enjoy, through everything, you enjoy seeing that student succeed. You enjoy seeing that student graduate. You enjoy hearing the student say, I got my first job, or I got my internship, or I got an A on this paper. Those small wins for students are really big wins for me.
So as we move on, why Kentucky State? We have so many, very few of our HBCUs are big. Many of them are small, private, religious institutions. So why Kentucky State? I mean, with your credentials, you could work anywhere.
Why do I work at Kentucky State? Or why? My leader is phenomenal. Our president is absolutely phenomenal. I think he's brilliant. I've told multiple people, I probably don't tell him this. He is the smartest person I know. I have never walked into a space that whether this was true for him or not, I thought it was, that he didn't know the answer. Whether that be at a doctor's office where, I had a friend that was in the doctor's office and that he said, you need to tell the doctor to give you this. And I'm like, you're in education. You don't know. You're not a doctor. But he knew exactly what to tell the doctor, and that was actually correct. So I have a phenomenal leader that I trust. And I think that when you have a leader that you trust and that you have poured yourself into at the institution, it makes it a lot easier to follow. So Kentucky State, the institution itself, great institution, phenomenal institution, and he brings a lot to it that I enjoy. So
I've always been very impressed with the diversity of Kentucky State University, the way that they thrive in the middle of Kentucky of all states. And just, it's one of the schools that I don't think in my entire last 25 years that I've heard, any negative, huge scandals at that institution.
I know.
And, that is a plus, especially as so many people are attacking HBCUs now. And so it's just amazing the work that they're doing for that state and for the country. So if we move on, you are big on student engagement. You're big on students being involved. And that was very impressive to me when you spoke at our conference. Why do you think that's important?
I know what my experience was. And I always like to get students, share my experience, but also let students know that they can have a better experience than I had. My experience at my undergrad was great. I enjoyed every minute of it. And I want students to have that same experience. For student success and getting students integrated into an institution, for me, I think you should cater to a student's spices. And this is what me and my friends have been talking about since we were in undergrad. So you want to make sure you cater to students' social, physical, intellectual, cultural, educational, and spiritual and social, all those spices that make up a student's experience. You want to cater to those things. And when you cater to those things, it creates an experience outside of the classroom that students can really appreciate, and they grow so much from it. So for me, I want to make sure that students can further themselves. And I want to make sure that their experience in undergrad is everything that they want it to be.
So we have a good question, and that's the joy of my show. Sometimes we take different turns. What do you think about an institution that might propose a higher ed program at the bachelor's level?
I think that higher education is new. That program and the field is new. It has not been around forever. And I think that institutions at the core deliver really good things, like a liberal arts curriculum. They deliver really good things for students as far as their basic core that I would never want to take away. if this became a track for me, and I'm a student affairs guy, I would not want student affairs at that level, because I want to see students get all those things that I know that institutions already give, and then build upon that. Now, there are if there are some tracks that students can see these things, especially for student affairs, I would definitely be in favor of that. I think student affairs is a place where students can really grow.
And I think you bring up a very important point. Higher ed as a program is new, and some schools are annually revamping their doctoral and master's programs because it's funny. I tell people all the time, they were like, what did you study when you were working on your PhD? I was like, a lot of theory. I said, because there is not a lot of tangible source work on the practical side of higher ed, because it is new, and so that was interesting to me. Like, I was studying all of this history of higher ed and all these various components, but when it got down to the work that I was doing, I was like, well, this is not
right.
So that's a very valid point. What do you say to the students who right now are concerned about COVID, who schools are talking about bringing all their students back in the spring? They're worried, they're nervous about being back on these campuses. And it's not just the students, but I have spoken to some administrators, faculty, and staff that are considering not returning as these numbers go up.
Right. And I was just about to say that I think students should realize that the faculty and staff are going through the same feelings, the same thoughts, all of those things too. The good thing is that we're going through it together. So this is a really good place, take out the COVID part, but this is a really good place for students to realize that we are going through the same thing. We feel the exact same thing you feel. When you're going to school, we're going to work, and we feel the same. COVID is real, and it's out there, and it does not, it's no respecter of persons. It can take you, me, and anyone else. So those things that students feel, we feel that too. So I would say you have to do what you're comfortable with. The students here, the good thing about Kentucky State, our leader is so beyond where sometimes I may think I am or anything, but we let students have it like Burger King. They can have it their way. If they want to stay at home and do their coursework, they can. If they want to be here on campus and be in the classroom, they can. If they want to be on campus and do their coursework online, to get that experience outside of the classroom, but still be safe in their room during class, they can. So it's all about the student's comfort level. And they should really do what they're most comfortable with. The anxiety is real. So make sure that whatever you're doing is exactly what, you're comfortable with.
And I'm glad that you mentioned how you all are offering courses this semester, because Edward Waters College is doing a similar thing. We in higher ed, and it's so funny, people always attach higher ed from education and assume when students get to higher ed, they don't have the same problems. But I was just talking to some of my colleagues. We have college students that have food issues. We have college students that have housing issues. And so often our campuses are their safe space.
Right.
And so, I know two of the students I mentor, sometimes the only time they've had regular meals was when they were at college.
Oh, yeah.
And so the struggle is real. And so I'm so glad that a lot of schools are trying to work in ways that allow our students to be the most successful.
Mm-hmm. One of my colleagues, Tracy Parkinson, he starts all of his, and he's an academic, but he always starts his faculty, retreats in the summer with asking one question. And that is, what is the difference between a high school senior and a college freshman? And you get a lot of different answers. But the only real difference is that they had a 3-month vacation. Those same things that they dealt with in high school are the same things that they may deal with here. The food insecurities that they may have dealt with at home, it does not mysteriously go away. They deal with those same things. Emotional, so all those issues that students may come with, they also bring those here. So it's our job as students come to our institutions and parents bring them to us, they're our responsibility. So it's our job to help them through that.
Mr. Duncan, if you could just tell us what institution you're with, that would be great, because we want to make sure that we are promoting institutions that are really working to secure all of our campus communities. And my apology, this is Doctor, but I don't have that information in front of me. So, it's challenging right now. Institutions are facing financial issues. I mean, we all know who work in education, a lot of revenue comes from housing and room and board. And when those figures start getting adjusted, budgets start getting adjusted. Right. And being in a state school, you all are not an independent institution. And so you all have different challenges. So what are some of the things that you all have worked to overcome this year? I know I did watch the graduation. It was amazing that so many students actually came to the graduation, that it was actually in person. It was amazing how everything was still physically distanced and it was out in the field and all. But it was just great that so many of us could watch. So what are some of the things that you all are doing currently to overcome what's going on?
Definitely the graduations. We're big on gatherings. It's very similar to home. So very, very big on gatherings. So whatever those may look like, each year we have, or each month we have an assembly or a convocation that happens. In that month during October, it just happened to be our Founders Day. So it's our historic combined Founders Day that we did with our graduation and our commencement, which was really good because the students still had an opportunity to graduate and get that feeling of accomplishment that everyone else got, walking across the stage. But then they also got to have walking out of that ceremony as an alum at that point. They were able to still do our gathering, our family gathering for our Founders Day. So we have opportunities like the Founders Day. Last week we had our Veterans Assembly where we were able to recognize veterans on campus. Our Mr. KSU and Miss KSU are both active in the military, and will continue after college. But we continue to have those gatherings to make it still feel like the Kentucky state that they saw before COVID-19. Of course, still, like you said, there's still the spacing. We have our social distancing, and it was great. But we still try to have those gatherings. Just last night, our SGA president and some colleagues, we went out just so that he can still get the feel of what former SGA presidents got, hanging out, going to dinner for a little bit, just to check in to see how school going, how are classes going, how is your role as SGA president going. So we're still trying to do some of those kind of things too.
So thank you, Dr. Sewell. Very good friend of mine.
Oh yeah.
Well-known higher education professional. And so we're so glad that you're watching today. And what you just said fed right into this next question. What does programming and student engagement look like at Kentucky State University right now? I know with the various platforms that students have, how are you all programming and keeping those students engaged?
It's actually really good. Moving online, it allows more students. That student that particularly probably would not have come to a program, in person because they may want to, be by themselves. They have an opportunity now to see a program. They can still be a part of our convocations, our assemblies, because they're virtual. But we still also have some things that are in person. So we've had a paint and sip that's been in person. Of course, typically there would be, a lot more students at it in one setting, but we were able to break that up to have multiple settings of students, I think, too. And a lot of the other institutions that I've worked at have been small. So I enjoy those small, intimate settings where you can really get to know someone. Someone doesn't fade to the back, but you're able to get to know somebody else that you might not have known, before. So we're still able to do some programming that's effective. And then we've kind of realized what are the needs of our students. So we know that mental health is a big thing. And then you put COVID on top of that. That's a bigger thing. So we're able to be more direct and more intentional about the work that we do and the programmings that we put on for our students. And they give us really good feedback. So they give us the feedback that, hey, I really like this one. We need to do it again. Or, hey, maybe we didn't like this one. Let's try something else.
Well, I think that's good too, because, my company works with a lot of schools and a lot of students across the country. And so I get the benefit now information from many places. And one of the major topics that's going on right now is the fear that students will not come back in the spring. I have been very vocal on my views that there is no returning to the past version of education. Like, that's over. We can't have students for almost a year pretty much learning on their own and then go back to the 1920s version of education where we sit in these lectures for 2 and 3 hours and expect students to learn. So what are your thoughts on that?
I was just talking to one of my friends this morning. I was driving to work talking to him, and I said, this new platform of how we are doing our education is no different from when we used to be at home at night and we used to hear the commercial about the miracle spring water. I mean, we were still, church has been online all the time. Of course, there's still that house, that church house that people go to, but it's always been online. You've seen a lot of pastors, preachers online. So some of the things for them is not, it's not new. Now you're getting to see that they were not crazy. They were actually being a lot more inexpensive in their approach and still delivering good product. So I think for institutions, we still have to kind of maneuver some, but still deliver a really good product and realize the time that we're in and make those two things mesh.
I mean, you have a very good point, and I had not really thought about the fact that I have been watching televangelists and pastors and preachers on TV since we had it, really. And a lot of them, especially when you become a mega preacher, the expectation is that everything is televised. So I guess the only shift there now is that most is not there, but you're still doing the same work you were doing.
Right.
I think one of the things that COVID has done that's positive for education is forced a shift that has needed to happen for a while. We have older people that are in higher ed who just were not technological at all. And they're not just older. Some of them are younger and just weren't wanting to do what was needed to be done. And so I think what COVID has done for education is really forced a shift that needed to happen.
Oh yeah, it forced a shift that needed to happen. And I think at the same time, it made those in the power that be appreciate what the very thing that they thought that may not have been a good thing to do, which was a lot of the online programs. So now we get to see some of the institutions that were doing online a long time, before COVID, seeing them show the model, and a lot of other institutions have the opportunity to do that. Kentucky State, we have a good bit of programs that are online. So for us, we were able to transition very easily, and other institutions may not have had that same luxury. But this is a path that I think now people are able to appreciate more for that online education.
And that's a very valid point. And I think really what it does too is expand our pool of applicants. Yes. Because gone are really the days where the expectation for a lot of people is they leave high school and go straight to college. College is getting increasingly expensive. If you're coming from a family that is not wealthy, the thoughts of paying, $20,000 to $50,000 a year for a degree that you might not need. And so I think what these online programs and these hybrid models are doing is really creating higher ed possibilities for a larger pool of people who might have thought that it was not something that was attainable.
Right. And at the institutions that they that aren't far from them, institutions that they may have always wanted to go to, now it's a possibility. So I think that COVID has released a lot of possibilities for students, for families, for parents, aunts, uncles, grandparents that still want, to get that accomplishment. So.
And that's a really good point as well. A lot of the Ivy League schools have added programs that are online during this time period. I think it was Harvard, and I might be wrong, but I think it was Harvard that one of their higher ed degrees this year was online. And one of my friends actually did it because, he always wanted to go to Harvard. But packing up and moving to Boston abruptly was not something that he could do. And he wasn't sure if he was going to be successful, and he's done well this semester, and so now he can think a little differently about his future.
Right.
A little plug. So Michael Weaver is my company's director of student engagement, and we're glad to have him on our staff. He's also a Kentucky State University graduate.
Yes.
He has a question. Since being in higher ed, what is the greatest lesson you have learned?
Oh, it's the one thing that that I live by in higher ed, and that's that everything in life happens for a reason. And if I lose my faith in that, then nothing in my life makes sense. So every job that I've taken, every role that I've done, it's been for a reason, and I may not have known it at that moment, but I've learned a lot. So every step of the way, it was because it was supposed to happen. So I don't know who faith believers, but I put my faith in the one above. So, where I'm supposed to be, I would have never thought that I would be in Frankfort, Kentucky. From South Carolina, I didn't even know where Frankfort, Kentucky was. So, but I didn't think that. But I know that being here has been an experience for me, and it's been a lot of lessons that I've learned just from being here in these roles. So.
A couple of things, Dr. Sewell, very good point. There are a lot of people that are retiring. And then, most people know my show is a little very direct. There are a lot of people who are leaving education who shouldn't have been in it in the first place.
Well.
And so I'm glad that, the Lord and this pandemic have shifted them to whatever the Lord might have as their destiny, because it was not education. Anytime I have people with such negative views on students, education is probably not for you.
Right.
The virtual platform allows socially shy students to participate and engage in amazing programs. I think that really addresses what you were saying. And I think, or when I was an undergrad, I was so social that when I went to a lot of things, I didn't want to be bothered. So I was the one who everybody knew, but I sat way in the back so nobody would bother me. Mm-hmm. And I think that this new system is really allowing students to be engaged without being, for lack of a better word, without being annoyed.
Right.
Because, when you're a student leader, people expect you to be at everything, to do all things. I tell people all the time, student leaders, especially at HBCUs, don't get the luxury of ever being off.
Right. Never.
That was hard for me, people knocking on my door at 2 or 3 in the morning because they needed things. And so it's just an interesting shift. Yes, this person's also saying that they've seen people retiring. He had another quote. Oh, here's a question. Do you think these spikes in enrollment will lead to a new norm, or do you think the numbers will decrease?
I think that this is the norm. At this point, this is the norm. I don't think there's a new norm, or this is the norm. And I think that America, we caught on late. If you see people overseas, they've been wearing masks. They'll get on the airplane on Delta Airlines and they have their mask on, and we're looking like, why do you have this mask on? But they've been doing this. So I think this is a good shift that will allow us to do, work is different. We won't do the same work like we did anymore. But virtual meetings, it's amazing what you can get done at home. It's amazing how much you can get done when you wake up. You don't need the extra, the hour, 2 hours to get, to transition from home to work. There's a lot that can get done. Now for me, I do need to go into the office sometimes because I need to sit at my desk. I need to print. I need to do the scan. Some things, I need that space for. But there's this amazing what you can do just from at home. And some people find that they can do and accomplish more from the bed. I've written a lot of papers and many of chapters of dissertation from my bed. So.
And I mean, the research is even saying that people are working more when they work from home because you do not have that clear-cut division that right. I'm at work, now I'm at home.
Yeah.
One of my friends is a lawyer, and he was like, I'm doing more work now than I ever was before. And I said, but the difference between you and me is that you have billable hours.
Mm-hmm. Listen, we're not cutting off. It's still going. It is still going.
And I think you bring up a very valid point that this is a new norm. And my area of research is enrollment management. And like I was saying earlier, I think we will probably continue to see increases in numbers because of the ability of a larger part of our population to study.
Right. And you'll see your numbers shift. You may still see your increase, but you may see a decrease in the resident student and an increase in the adult population, an increase in the commuter student. So while some numbers may go down in one area, they're probably going up in a different one.
Mm-hmm. So. Very, very valid point. And I think the key point that I just took away from what you said is that there will be a difference, I believe. Now, I have not completed my research, but I think there'll be a very different look at our student populations after this pandemic. Because I know a lot of older people, and I mean older people over 50, who have returned to school because it is now doable. And schools are making it feasible. You know, they only have to take 1 or 2 classes. Right. They don't have to go to a campus. Right. I know a woman who's 65. She's retired and she's always wanted a degree. She is now, it's at UPenn or somewhere. She always wanted to get an Ivy League degree. But now she has an opportunity because as a grandmother, she's not moving.
Right.
But now she's probably more technologically aware too than many people I know.
Yes, both of my parents, they have their laptops now. We went laptop shopping. They have their wireless printers, and each has their own. They're like, "This is mine. You can do what you want on yours, but this is mine, and I got stuff to do." So it's really opening up doors for other generations to still partake in the electronic experience, though.
And Dr. Hodges, thank you for bringing up that point that this current situation is helping professors and administrators of other divisions see why engagement matters. For those who are not at higher ed, those of us who work in student affairs are often seen as like the other people. I always say like we're looked at like extracurricular activities in high school, and I don't like the word extracurricular because I think everything is curricular and has a purpose.
Oh, yes.
And often people do not look at the staff or the administrators in student affairs as the same as everything else, when the reality is that our faculty might have their students for 3 hours a week. Mm-hmm. If they're on campus, we have them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 9 months a year.
Oh, yes. And some don't go home. So they'll be here for the summer. So, and that's a really good point, because even across any institution, that student affairs group is that group that is all up in the student's business, knows who they're dating, who their mom is, who their dad is, how they're getting home. Some of the most comfortable people that students will talk to about, issues. They notice the change in the student when something isn't right, or they see that shift or in the student's attitude or position. So that's really good. I appreciate that, Hodges.
Yeah, he is so supportive of everything I do. Like anytime I'm like, a guest is not, I haven't heard back from him, can you pop on my show? Like, of course. And then, the last time I had him on, his show was like 1 hour and 40 minutes because these people were asking questions and questions and questions. And so I'm just so thankful for his support. So as we shift to part 3, what are some of the challenges that you just see in higher ed and HBCUs across the board? COVID on this side, but just in general, like what are some of the challenges you see?
A lot of my dissertation work, well, all of it was with HBCUs, and I worked to kind of learn the HBCU president at a private institution. My work still continues. Once you finish the dissertation, you want to take some time and do some other stuff. But I still have a second part that I need to do, which is to figure out the needs and the assessment of the public HBCU president. But a lot of mine focused on the private HBCU president, and I work with UNCF, so I'm greatly indebted to UNCF for helping me to reach my goal. But when I was an undergrad, we talked about, I was an SGA, like I said, and we would get with other SGAs, and we would realize that the issues that we have on our campus were the same issues that they have on theirs. So the issues that are on one HBCU campus is, they have the same issues there. It may be bigger, maybe smaller, but the issues are there, right? So we see the student retention, we see the graduation rates, we see the need for more funding from the state. And I don't know if anyone has seen HBCU Digest, but they're having some really good conversations of what HBCUs can look like and how they can be further developed and brought into the forefront with this new administration. So I think that the issues and the challenges that HBCUs have already are the same ones, that we'll see in the future. But I think that we will be more in tune of how to accomplish those and how to overcome those challenges. I think COVID has narrowed and put us in a better scope of these are the things that are most important and these are the things that we need to do. And I think that after COVID is over, we'll still be in that mindset to still overcome those challenges. So it'll give us a different perspective.
And I'm glad you brought that up. I just finished an article on tuition restructuring at HBCUs. And of course, there was very little information on HBCUs as I did my research. But what I found so interesting is that there are so many PWIs that are having the exact same financial and tuition issues that HBCUs are.
Right. And we've had our 107th HBCU is here in Kentucky, Simmons College of Kentucky. But we've had 2 or 3 HBCUs that have closed down. Those are 2 or 3 too many, right? So, however, we can work to rally to advance our HBCUs and make sure they still stand for tomorrow. Because believe it or not, PWIs are doing it. They're able to rally with each other to make sure that they still stand. We have to do the same thing.
So since you kind of brought this topic up, and my show sometimes throws curveballs, what do you think about this very blatant and historical rivalry that HBCUs have? And I will use my school for instance. The AUC has multiple schools. Mm-hmm. Anytime a talk comes up of merging any of those institutions, you may as well be throwing racial slurs at the entire AUC, because that is just not going to happen. Clark College and Atlanta University merged in the 80s, and that was the end of that. But like Morehouse Spelman, that is not going to happen. That is not going to happen. So what do you think about this rivalry? We joking about it at homecoming times and all, but in terms of administration, it's a very real situation. We do not historically collaborate as institutions in the same you just said PWIs do. So what are your thoughts?
I was in South Georgia, like I said, and Georgia has done a phenomenal job, the university system of Georgia, at consolidating institutions while still helping institutions to keep their identity, right? They did that great. Our HBCUs, different story, right? For me, we need each of our HBCUs to remain working where they work, right? So Spelman is not merging with anybody. Let Spelman have the Spelman experience. Each HBCU has their own experience. Now, I went to HBCU with the Marching 101, and I know FAMU only had 100, but South Carolina State and FAMU are not merging. Let us have our own experiences, because those experiences that I got at my HBCU were the ones that I needed. Those were the ones that I needed. So I don't see that those HBCUs merging. I don't see that one.
So I am how do I say this nice? I am not a proponent of merging schools. I really believe that we have the resources in our communities to make all of our schools sustainable and excellent. I just don't think that we utilize our internal community resources the way we need to.
Right.
So what do you think about the idea? I have posed in several meetings, more collaboration. We are seeing it now with some of the state HBCUs, like, Tennessee State has collaborative programs with other schools. Morehouse now has collaborative programs with other schools. Ironically, most times those schools are not HBCUs.
No.
And so what are your thoughts on more collaboration across our institutions?
I think we definitely have to collaborate. Even for South Carolina State, we collaborate, I think, with Wisconsin, but it was only for engineering majors. So for me, I could not necessarily collaborate as an education major. Yes, we did some things with Clemson in regards to education with Call Me Mister and that kind of thing. So we have those pieces of collaboration. But I think the bottom line is that a lot of PWIs tell a really good story, and they've been telling their really good story for a long time. So HBCUs, we have to manage what our story is, our brand, and push that to the forefront. You see, and I think there's a really good conversation going on now is why, and I posted it on Twitter, I said we have more than 3 HBCUs. We have more than Howard, Morehouse, and Spelman. We have more of those 3. So why are those donors Why are they getting those large donations? Well, everyone, we have to tell our stories better. And we cannot tear down the next HBCU to tell our story better, right? Because when one wins, we all win. Let's be clear, it was only 107 of us, and there's less than that now. So when one of us wins, we still win. Kamala Harris, she's going to the White House. I think that's a win for us. I'm pretty sure we can mark that one as a win. So
I do a lot of work with fundraising. A lot of my consulting work now is with fundraising. And you know what I will say about the institutions that traditionally get most of that revenue is they also have significantly large fundraising staffs. Like the Office of Institutional Advancement at some schools is equal to the Division of Student Affairs.
Oh yeah.
And so I think, the challenge in some research I'm doing now is that we have underfunded and under-resourced our institutional advancement offices, but we expect sometimes the same return. Like Morehouse and Spelman just got that huge amount of money. But what people don't know is they have been cultivating that relationship for a while. Of course, the announcement to most people is like, oh, it just happened. But, those people have been to the campuses, and it just aligns with exactly what you're saying. A lot of our schools are doing such amazing work, but people don't know because we don't tell our story well. And sadly, when we allow other communities to tell our story, very rarely do they tell the positive sides. Like I used to always fight for pain and still do. Everyone was always talking about their accreditation, but they were never talking about the students who are graduating and going to grad school without paying, or, the amazing people that have graduated from the institution, or the fact that, in the leanest of times, the entire faculty staff administration agreed to pay cuts so that we could continue to maintain what we were doing. And so I think, we do need to do a better job of telling our story. And something that Curtis Coleman said too, really looking at competitive and relevant programs. I don't think every school needs to have a cybersecurity program if you do not have the appropriate facilities on your campus.
Right.
But we can adjust things. A lot of schools now are getting rid of education programs, but then the students can't pass the test.
I was one of those students. That I could pass. That test just wasn't my friend. So I realized that it just wasn't going to work out. We were never going to be friends. And so what I've done is made sure, and there's an initiative at Kentucky State where we allow for our graduating seniors, we'll pay for their first exam, right? Their graduate exam. So some of those happen to be the praxis. So all the students that are in education, I know in the class that I teach, I'm saying we are paying for your praxis. You need to study. These are and it's a part of my, my syllabus. These are the websites or web pages you can go to study for the praxis. You need to study because when the time comes, you need to pass this test. I've already been there. I already know the struggle. I don't want you to do that struggle too. So
I remember when Georgia still had the praxis, and some of my friends were stressed out 2, 3, 4 times later. But Georgia's smart. They just got that and developed their own test. So now we have this, which depending on the person is better and depending on the person is worse. But it's a little more focused on what's really done.
Right.
So, there are challenges across the board. What do you think about students now? There's this big discussion. A lot of people telling students they don't need to go to college. You can work without going to college. I have issues with that primarily because there are certain fields that we need our people in that you can't be in without degrees. You can't be a doctor or a lawyer without training. Right. So what are your thoughts on this discussion that's happening across the country?
My nephew is just starting 9th grade. And he and I have had the conversation. I've already told him college is an option. You will go to college. Okay. I think one part of it is that some students don't think that they have an option, that college is even an option for them. When I was in school or in high school, it was either college, the military, or you were going to work. Because I was not going to do well with the military. It cut one of my options out. Military wasn't going to be it. So either I went to work or I went to college. I thought college might be more fun and I might be able to take that a little further down the line. So college was the path for me. I knew that college was an option. I knew that I could go there. Some students in high school, they don't share that same thought or that same system of support. So as a culture, we have to let students know the ones that can, and everyone can get into college. And if everyone can get into college, we need to get them to college. So I think it's more about getting them there so that they can believe that they can actually get there. But college is important. It's an option, but college isn't for everyone. I know that college isn't for everyone. Some of my friends went into the military, and I applaud you and I thank you, because that was not for me. So everyone has their place where they need to be. But I don't want students to think that college isn't an option for them. It is. So.
And I think that that's a challenge that, one of the programs like my company has is our Ready for College program. And what we're finding out is that, one, students don't think it's an option like you're saying. And two, our system is not preparing our students for college. You can't start thinking about college your senior year of high school.
Right.
We can't help you with 4 weeks left.
Right.
It's interesting when we look at other communities, they start that training in 9th and 10th grade. So by the time they're at 12th grade, that's done. I was fortunate that my mother was an educator. By junior year, I knew I was going to college and I was on track to get there.
Right.
And I think that, there are just some adjustments that have to be made earlier in the program. Because, the data tells us that, especially with Black boys, they've decided about it in the middle school whether education is important.
Right. Right. And I think that I don't remember if it was Clark Atlanta. I might be giving them some credit for something that might not have been them. But I think a few years ago, Clark was actually going into the middle schools to recruit students there, because once a student sees, this is the school that I see on TV all the time, this is where I want to go. Their decision is made up, way before they get to college now or to high school. Now they're trying to figure out, how can I get to that institution? So I think that eventually we'll see a bigger shift of, let's go ahead and start putting, even if we're not necessarily recruiting, we're marketing, because that's different from recruiting. We're marketing our institution to those middle school students. A lot of times you may see, even in churches, if you go to a church and it might be the senior citizens night, you might not be recruiting there, but you might be marketing your institution to those parents, those grandparents, because they're going to take that and take it to their children, their grandchildren, and say, hey, you might need to look at this school, because they're influential. So for our students that are in middle school, I think when they take something home, whether it be from any school, they will take it home and they'll say, hey, mom, I have this. Hey, dad, I have this. And then it becomes a conversation. So we can start those conversations earlier for college being an option and a possibility. I think we'll see some results.
And I would just like to especially thank, our Black Greek letter organizations, because a lot of them have expanded their educational programming to younger students.
Right.
And I know especially our male fraternities have really started to reach out to middle and elementary young boys.
Oh, yeah.
And I think by seeing examples of what you can be, that starts to shift your mindset. The only thing you see is people being killed on television. Your mindset is not going to be thinking about going to college and furthering your education. And so I think you bring up a very valid point that we need to start earlier. And we need to be, as Dr. Felton says, we need to be in the trenches.
In the trenches.
Yeah, we can't be up, on our pedestals, looking down, hoping that somebody else is doing the work.
Right.
Curtis Coleman did bring up a question, and many schools are waiving these test scores. You think standardized tests will become obsolete? I personally believe that standardized testing is already obsolete.
Mm-hmm.
I was not a good test taker. If there were letter grades, I failed both the ACT and SAT. But the rest of my materials were so good that I got into every college I wanted to go to. But I think standardized testing, we all know is racially biased, that our young people are not prepared to do well. And many schools have permanently removed standardized testing as a requirement for educational access at their institutions. Not only that, they've also, if they use it, it's for placement for additional services and not as a condition for enrollment. So what are your thoughts, Dr. Graham?
I'll be very transparent, because I am with some of my mentees, and I know that Michael Weaver has heard this story before, but I went to University of West Georgia for grad school. I did not get in. I got the denial letter. They were like, not going to work. This GRE score that you sent in was not it. So I still went to University of West Georgia because everything else in my packet was so good that they said, let's still have an interview. So I had a conversation with Corey Ruman. He was the director of the program, and he said, listen, your GRE scores were not where the program or the School of Education would, their threshold, but I think that you really have something, and we want to bring you here. So my conversation was not with probably everyone else's, panel for grad admission. Mine was with the program director, with the vice president for student affairs and enrollment management, with the chair of the department, with the dean. It was so many different people in there that my interview, they were shocked with my interview. The very next year, and you can go check it out. The next year, they did not ask for the GRE. You could turn it in, but it wasn't a requirement. My grades, my GPA was at the top of my cohort. So it's not for me. It's not something that I always say. I look for the total package, and I think students should have the total package, and that's what they need to present. There may be a shift, a flaw somewhere, but you have to make up for that. So for students with the GRE, ACT, it weeds students out, right? How bad do you want it? So my conversations didn't stop with hey, you got this denial letter, and let me not answer the next phone call from Carrollton, Georgia. I'm glad I did answer the next phone call, because the next phone call told me on Sunday I might need to get in my car and be there on that Monday so I can have this additional interview. So and I had, there were stipulations too. They said you have to have a 3.0. At the end of your semester, I had a 4.0. What you got next? I can do this. So the standardized tests are just tests. They're just standardized tests. And that's easy for us to say, but for students that are not good test takers like you and I, we still have a lot to give. So we have to bring that package and that presentation to the forefront so that everyone can understand and see what we have to give.
And, I think that those tests also do a disservice to our young people, and regardless of ethnic or demographic makeup, that come from underfunded school systems, that come from systems that not have the same resources. And I have great respect for our educators who work in the public school system, because I did that for about 5 months. And when it came to winter break, I didn't go back. I was like, this is a whole nother thing over here.
Oh, yeah.
The expectations are so high, and sometimes we have more resources in higher ed, and you and I both know that we don't have a lot of resources.
Right.
So I have great respect for those who work in the K-12 system across the board. And just thank you all for the work you're doing. I think that, as higher ed professionals, we could probably do more, as you said, to assist in those areas, not just with preparing them to enter college, but, one thing that we were starting when I was at Payne is sending our students out. It's always amazing me when we see the campus kings and queens that go read to elementary school students who don't think that that is a part of their existence.
Right.
So we just never know how we're impacting people.
Right. And I value our teachers so much. I check on my nephews. I have 2 nephews that are in school that's in school now. And I value teachers so much. And I know my brother now values teachers so much, because now the students are at home. You see everything that goes on in the classroom. So now parents are doing a lot more than what they probably think that teachers do. So I appreciate our K-12 teachers. They're doing a phenomenal job.
And I think COVID is helping parents understand what teachers have been going through all of the years, because you are now the hands-on teacher.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So those of us who might have, challenged children, you understand now what your teachers go through on a regular basis to make this work. So, I'm just very appreciative of everything that's going on. And I'm appreciative to some of the changes that are even happening, in the public school systems. There's an organization called Profound Gentlemen, and their entire mission is to increase the number of, Black and brown male teachers at our schools across the country. And they're now in 2 cities, and they're looking to add a 3rd. And so the work is being done. I think there's never going to be enough of us to do all of the work.
Oh yeah, no. But we have to strive for that. That's something that we consistently have to strive for. And for us, I think for students, if they can see more people that look like them, they can do a lot more. I worked at Coker, and I was a director of residence life, and we had interviews for our RAs and first year mentors. And the assistant director said, "Well, what are you looking for? What do who am I supposed to pick?" And I said, "I'm not picking it for you. All I ask is that you have a representation of every student on this campus in this group. Because if a freshman can come in and see someone that looks like them or can identify with them, that's the win. That's the success. That's how we can make sure that students succeed." So the same method there is the same thing for our institutions, regardless, HBCU, PWI, any institution, we need to see more representation. High schools, middle schools, elementary schools, we need to see that representation. I think our young kings and queens need to see that.
And I'm glad you brought up that is also the case in higher ed. Like I said earlier, I think a lot of people think we don't have similar challenges. But you and I both know that when we especially have Black males that come on campus, they tend to gravitate towards people who they think will be supportive.
Oh, yeah.
And who look like them. It was amazing to me how many people started calling me Pop and all this when I was in higher ed, and I was like, okay. But for many of them, I always utilize our Black males because in every demographic, unfortunately, they achieve lower, and so I always try to bring that up. Now, I would also like to say that if you look at the research, the top demographic of everybody is Black females.
Yes.
In all of higher ed, they have the best data in terms of success and achievement. So don't ever let anybody change your mind on that. And so I just think that, it's important that we do have people look like us. My senior year, and I'm transparent, my dad died, and I had literally shut off in October. Like, I was just like, whatever, who cares? Like, because my motivation always was and still is making him proud. So when he passed, it was like somebody had just shut this switch off. Well, my godfather directed the Glee Club, and he sent for me at my house. And I came to his office completely annoyed and over it. And I had a whole breakdown, and he just looked at me, and I'll never forget, he said, "Okay, now that you've cried, what are we going to do about it?"
Right.
And I was looking at him like, well, you're probably the most insensitive person I have ever met in my life. But I utilize that now. When you have the emotional response, then how do we fix it? And so I think it's very important that we have people like us.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I really love about my HBCU experience. I had some of the most phenomenal mentors. You need that person. Even to this day, I call one of my mentors, and she is one of the only people that can cuss me slam out, and I can say nothing back to. So you need those people sometimes to say, yeah, I understand all the things you're saying, and you might want this pity party right now, but I just don't have the time to give it to you. This is what you need to do. You need to get up and I actually had this conversation this morning with one of my friends. I said, yeah, I understand all the stuff that you're saying, but this is what you need to do. And I don't have the time to go and to tell you, to listen to this whole story. This is what you need to do. You need to do it today.
It's so funny. People always be like, you speak so well and all, and you never seem nervous. I'm like, if you only knew. But at Morehouse, we had Dr. Ann Winbush Watts.
Oh, wow.
She taught speech, and then she became the vice president of special academic programs, but she was over the Candle in the Dark Gala. And students had to audition in her office to be able to present awards at this gala. And I'll never forget, I went into my interview with her, and I was reading the thing, and she started doing other stuff. And I was like, well, this is the rudest thing ever. So when I finished, she said, well, I'm not going to select you. And I was like, but okay. She's like, the reason I started doing other things is because I didn't want to interrupt you because you need the experience. But your public speaking is atrocious. And I would never put you up in front of anybody and speak. And at that moment, I was like, okay, we're going to fix this. Like, this is never going to happen again. But, that was her thing, how you present yourself is important. What'd you say? I'm sorry.
You need some of those people to tell it to you just like that. Our president can tell me a lot of things, and he will tell me, and I'm like, well, that really wasn't helpful. That didn't make me feel good. But it's not supposed to make me feel good, because sometimes if it makes you feel good, you're not going to take heed like you should. So I'm thankful, I'm grateful for some of those conversations that he has with me, because if it came from somebody that was going to be nice about it, those things probably wouldn't change. So,
and it helps when you know the person's intent is to make you successful.
Right.
Now, so we're not saying to those who have bad attitudes that that's okay.
That's not your ministry with a bad attitude.
Yeah. Because I am very direct, and when people come to me like, will you mentor me? I'm like, so let me explain to you what mentorship for me means.
Yes.
Now, that might not be what you can endure. But if you're right, you're right. But if you're wrong, you're going to know if I'm your mentor, because you're not going to go around telling people I'm your mentor and then you're embarrassing me.
Don't go out here embarrassing me and stuff.
Right. So I think that's a very valid point. And the one thing I really want to bring up, as you just said, is even when you get to our level, we still have mentors that we rely on for guidance through this journey.
Oh, yeah.
Because some people believe that, you get to a certain point, you don't need anyone. And
you are still learning. You still need advice. I call Yakima Reinhardt in Fayetteville, North Carolina all the time. And I say, this is what I'm going through. And she sits and lets me talk and say whatever I want to say. And then she gets me together. And then
I text Rosalind Floyd. She has a doctorate in piano, and she's actually at one of our state schools. She's at Augusta University. And I'll text like, can you call me back whenever your schedule's free? Because I also know that she's going to give me the advice without being concerned with what I want her to say.
Right. And you respect that person, and you know it's coming from a place of love. You know where it's coming from. And I think that's the best part. Afterwards, you can go, do whatever you want to do, but you know that moment, it meant something. And that person is also investing in you. They're investing this time and this energy into you. So they're not saying it just to say it.
And I'm glad that you just brought that up. And that is the fact that when you get a mentor, that's their investment as well. And I don't think sometimes people think about that, that we are also agreeing to give you time that in many instances we don't really have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it's always been impressive to me how many of our HBCU presidents are actually friends outside of work.
Yes.
It's good to have people that you can just be transparent with. Those of us at our level, at the senior administration level and the presidents, where you can just like not be Dr. somebody.
Right. You just be a regular person.
And what people don't understand, when I was still in Augusta, I couldn't go to Walmart. I couldn't go anywhere. Augusta's small for a major city, and pain is well known. Mm-hmm. And so I would be out at stores and people be screaming my name across the store. And so you don't get the luxury, like I said at the beginning of the interview, of ever really being off.
Right.
So I think that's good. So as we come to the conclusion, because we've been on here an hour, what are some things that you might want to share? It goes by quick. I tell people all the time. So what are some things you want to share with us?
I think for me, because this is a conversation that's happening in the millennial space, is the work that we're doing, excelling, moving on, moving up, that kind of thing. Everything, like I said, everything happens in its own time. Everything, we have to be patient. I think COVID alone has taught everyone patience. Patience is a virtue. It teaches us a lot, right? So COVID itself has been phenomenal. Not the virus, but the space that it allowed us to be in, whether that be with our families, whether that be, focusing on a lot of other things that we could have, that we wanted to make time for that we didn't. But I say that we just need to use some patience and make sure that we continue to excel in the things that we want to do. But, think through it. It gives us time to think a lot and check on your friends, check on your people. Health taught me a lot, and you need to check on your strong friends. That's one thing. Check on your strong friends, right? So I think take advantage of all the things that COVID has allowed us to do and see.
And it's interesting. I know some of our viewers are not Christian, but I am. The Bible clearly says all things work together. And I had to get a friend of mine together the other day. I was like, all doesn't mean some, like all means the good and the bad. And so there is a vision and a mission in whatever God is doing. Mm-hmm. Sometimes as humans, we don't have a clue. Like, I don't understand how millions of people are dying and this is going to work out. But then when I think about it, there have been some pluses. We have people that are band together who never would have band together ever. Oh, yes. We have changes happening in education in this country that happened in other countries years ago. So there are pluses. We now have, one of my little cousins was like, I don't like being at home because we have to talk to each other. But, there is a reestablishment of family culture in many instances, especially when we keep going in these quarantines.
Oh, yes.
I very rarely, my kids live here and I very rarely even talk to them because if I'm not working, I'm just doing something else. But we've been talking more because we're in the house so much.
Yeah.
And so there are some pluses. And so I think you bring up a very valid point that, we just have to figure out how to find, the silver lining, as people say.
Yes. One of the songs that I'm on now is called Situation by Jonathan McReynolds. And all he says in that song is that he's inviting you into the situation. So there's a lot of things that happen. Some things will be good, some things will be bad, but he's just inviting you into the situation to help manage it. So
one of my favorite artists. I just love because I can listen to spiritual music and I can actually get other work done. And because, I love gospel before I make this statement so that I don't get all kind of hate mail. But he's not just hollering at me all the time.
Oh, yeah, no.
And so my spirit can be fed soothingly, and I can be getting stuff done. So, I usually have him playing a lot.
All the time, yeah. I know.
Just for those I'm Pentecostal too. So, I can shout and all with the best of them. But sometimes, I just like it a little more quiet.
Just something soft.
Right.
Soft.
But I'm so glad to have had you on today. It's been a great discussion. We're getting great feedback over here in the chat. People are really engaged. And so I just want to thank you for being on the show today. And if you have any final words you'd like to share with our viewers.
Just go and be great. Take every day as you can. You have 24 hours in a day, so use them wisely.
All righty. And that is from Dr. Graham, everyone. We thank him. Don't sign off, Dr. Graham. I'll be right back with you.
Okay.
So, everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's discussion. It was great to have Dr. Graham on. Very beneficial conversation. We will have this played back, so people can review it. Make sure you share the recording. And I do want to, just before we go, hit a few topics again. Thank you to our sponsors who have been with us and who are helping to fund this entire week of events. Surface, which is a new company that has skincare products. And then Java 365, the coffee company. Again, you do get a discount if you use our code. And so we're thankful for both of these companies that are partnering with us this week and helping to fund. If you would like to be a sponsor, feel free to reach out to me on my website or via social media, and we can get you on board. And then here, my social media. Make sure you contact and connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, and our new YouTube channel, which many of you are watching this live, and we're so thankful that you've been on here. And the final note again, we are in the process of trying to raise $10,000 in scholarship funds by the end of the year to help support our students for next semester. We have a number of requests, and we're trying to get all of those filled. So I just want to thank everyone. Thank you for all of the great comments and thoughts and questions today. Your involvement makes this show great. And so we just want to thank all of you. Have a great evening. And don't forget that we will be back. We will be back on Friday with a discussion from Patrick McCoy on arts, education in this country. He is well known across the field. So I'm thankful for him. And then if you want to register for my grant writing workshop, which is on Saturday morning, Grant Writing 101. Visit my website, rwaynewoodson.com, and we'll be glad to have you with us. Thank you and have a good evening, everybody.